So today we will be setting up entire architecture where we will have our Prometheus server running, and then we will have a dummy Python based app. So the Prometheus server will scrape metrics from that particular app. So let's get started. This is the Python app which will be scraped by Prometheus. So this does a very simple thing. We have imported Prometheus client library, which solely works to start the Prometheus HTTP server on port 8000, and it exposes the metrics at slash metrics. So that is all it does. And we have our Python server running on the Flask app, which is running on port 5000. So what this app has, it has a homepage which just returns hello Prometheus, but then it also behind the scene it also like increments the request count. So this is what is stored in the request count parameter, that is a metric name. So let's try to run this app. So we'll just move to that folder, and then we'll run the server on it. So if you see, we have our server running at this particular location. So this is our Flask server. So we are getting here, let me just zoom in so that you can see. So this prints hello Prometheus. If we take a look at the other thing which was exposed, that is this endpoint, let's see what is this endpoint returning. So this has got plenty of metrics which is returned at the slash metrics endpoint. So this is what will be scraped by our Prometheus server. Now let's try to have our Prometheus server up and running. The file is getting downloaded here. So this is done and we have the star file downloaded. Now what next? We'll just extract the star file and create a separate folder. So we have the star file downloaded here, and we have under this folder we have different libraries and all. But most important thing for us is this prometheus.yml file, which contains the specifications needed to run our it basically configures what our Prometheus server attributes would be. So this alerting and all is for alert manager configuration. We actually don't need it, so we'll just remove this. Then we have global variables, so it just defines how much after how much duration will the scrape operation continues. So here we have set the scrape interval to every 15 seconds. Again, evaluation rules also every 15 seconds. Now we have rules file. So this will be covering in some other video, but it is not of our concern as of now. Then coming to the scrape configuration, here we define that what is the endpoint we are scraping. We want to give it a name, we want to give the endpoint to it. So all this can be done here. So by default it will scrape the slash metrics. It's not necessary to have the slash metrics endpoint. We can change it to other, like by setting the metrics path parameter we can change the endpoint, but we are following the default rules. And job name, let's rename it to something else. Maybe we'll rename it to Python app. Okay. And here is where we define what needs to be scraped. This 9090 is the default port at which our Prometheus runs. So by default the config file contains okay, Prometheus will scrape itself, but here we want it to scrape our Python server which is running at a different port, and you know where the metrics were. So if we take a look, this is what we want to scrape. Slash metrics, we don't need to define it. By default it will scrape for that particular endpoint itself, but we need to define the port which is 8000. So let's change it here. Now Okay, this is good to go. So once we have our app set up, we want to run our Prometheus server and scrape this particular Python app. So we need to run some commands, and let's check. We'll run. We need to be inside the Prometheus folder. Once we are inside the Prometheus folder, we will run the Prometheus server. So that for that we need to write the command Prometheus, and then we have a flag which is config.file. So you define on what are the parameters on which your like Prometheus server will be running. So here we define it as Prometheus.yml. Cool. So if you see our server is ready to receive web request and it has started. So let's go to some other, let's open a new window prompt and then curl. So we have started at our default, we have started our Prometheus server at the default port, and this is what we are getting. So let's try it out. Let's open it. So here, let me close the other things we have. So here we have our Prometheus server up and running. There are various parameters, but we will move to the status. Under that we have targets. And here we'll see that this is the endpoint, it is scraping. This is the job name we see, and it has only two labels. We talked about labels, keys and values in our previous video. So this has got two labels. One is instance, which is this one, and the job name which we defined it as a Python app. So we can add more we can add more labels to it. But let's see what can we get in the graph. Let's say I want to get the count which has been defined in this particular metric. So here we have got a lot of metrics. Let's focus on app request total. So we go to the graph part, we try to write, so let's say app request total. So if we hit the execute button, we'll get, okay, one request was made. So let's just make one more call and one more. So we have total counter should be 3. Let's see if it is updating it. So it's still not updated. Why so? Because we have set a time interval after which it will scrape the metrics, and here last scrape was approximately 13 seconds ago. So until and unless the next scrape is made, you won't get the updated data. So let's wait for the scrape to happen again, and then we can recheck if the metric value got updated. So you can see now the value has updated to 3. So if you are in the table section, we will get a table view. But if we move to the graph part, we will get a graph view. So this is based on the timestamp as well. So this is like we had a total of like one request at this particular point of time, and then it was 1 till this point, but then it moved to 3 at this particular instance. So this is how you'll see it in the graph. So that is it, we are good to go. Apart from this, let me tell you about some of the other things you can find here. So we have alerts. So you can define alerts. As you saw in the config file, we had the alert manager part. We'll have I'll create a separate video for it, but for now you need to understand we can create alerts in this, and then you can define your own metrics. We have our Python server running. Here we have just made created a simple counter metric. You can create different types of metrics, depends on your need, and then different queries can also be run based on the metric. Like suppose we had this app creator thing, right? App request total. So as discussed previously, Prometheus allows us to run the aggregation functions. So what we can do is maybe this total is itself a sum. So we'll maybe take, okay, this is one metric, and we can take its average over time. So average over time, And here we need to define the time aspect as well, like maybe 5-minute window works, right? So if we execute this, you'll get, okay, an average of this much requests were made for the last 5 minutes, or say if we take off last 10 minutes. So this 10m represents 10 minutes. You can maybe you can define it as 1h, which represents 1 hour. So this is, you can modify your server to to create a host of metrics, and you can use Prometheus to scrape all of those. That's it. Hope you find it helpful. Thank you.